What if every breath held a secret? Have you ever paused to consider the significance of a single breath? In the hustle of daily life, we often overlook the simple act of breathing. Yet in Buddhist teachings, each breath is a gateway to mindfulness, a step toward inner peace. This is the tale of Every Breath Counts for a Reason, a story that unveils the profound wisdom hidden in the rhythm of our breath. It's a journey into the heart of awareness, teaching us that by embracing each breath, we embrace life itself. In the ancient city of Varanasi, where the sacred Ganges River flows with quiet wisdom and the temples echo with chants older than memory, there lived a young man named Arjun. Born into a wealthy merchant family, Arjun had everything a man of his age could dream of: fine silks from distant lands, fragrant spices from the south, and a sprawling estate that overlooked the riverbanks. Servants hurried at his command, and scholars often gathered in his courtyard for lively debates. But despite the comfort and respect he enjoyed, Arjun carried a quiet ache within him, an emptiness that gnawed at his soul. At night, while the city slumbered beneath a blanket of incense and moonlight, Arjun would sit alone on the rooftop, gazing at the stars. His heart was heavy with questions he couldn't name, let alone answer. What is the purpose of all this? Why does joy feel fleeting, even when surrounded by abundance? Books had offered him clever ideas, but no peace. Travels had shown him beautiful sights, but no deeper truth. His mind was sharp, but his spirit remained adrift. His restlessness grew. He began to withdraw from the comforts of his household, finding no joy in banquets or festivals. Friends whispered that he had become strange, lost in thoughts that didn't belong to someone of his station. Yet Arjun didn't mind. Deep down, he knew his life could not continue in its current form. Something within him was calling, quietly, persistently, towards something greater, something truer. Then one morning, as golden light spilled over the ghats, he overheard two travelers speaking in hushed tones by a tea vendor. They spoke of a revered monk, a sage who lived in the forested hills beyond the city. Mahadeva, a man whose presence was said to be as calming as the river itself. They described him as a seeker who had long since ceased to seek, having found a peace that seemed otherworldly. Villagers spoke of his eyes, deep, quiet wells of understanding, and how a single sentence from him could quiet even the most troubled mind. Something stirred in Arjun. It was not mere curiosity, but a pull, like gravity, from the soul itself. That very evening, without fanfare, Arjun packed a small satchel. He took nothing of luxury, only simple robes, a flask of water, and a worn copy of the Bhagavad Gita. Leaving behind his estate, his name, and the noise of the city, he set out on a path few dared to walk, a path toward stillness, toward truth, toward Mahadeva. The journey to the Himalayas was neither swift nor easy. Arjun traveled through dense forests, across winding rivers, and up steep, mist-covered trails. Along the way, he encountered villagers who offered him fruit and stories, mendicants who walked barefoot with eyes like fire, and moments of deep fatigue when his spirit wavered. But the thought of Mahadeva, the silent sage beneath the Bodhi tree, kept him moving. It was not the man he sought exactly, but the stillness that surrounded him like an invisible cloak. After weeks of travel, Arjun arrived at a quiet monastery carved into the mountainside. The stone walls were weathered with age, moss softening their hard edges. The air was thinner here, but purer somehow, scented with pine and the crispness of snow from peaks that kissed the heavens. He walked past prayer wheels and low-burning incense, past saffron-robed monks tending gardens in silence, until he saw him, Mahadeva. The monk sat cross-legged beneath a Bodhi tree whose roots seemed to reach into the very heart of the mountain. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappled patterns dancing across his still figure. His face was serene, lined with age and wisdom, eyes gently closed as if listening to something deeper than sound. Arjun did not speak. He simply sat a few paces away, unsure how long he waited. Minutes, hours, perhaps an entire day. Time seemed to unravel in the monk's presence. Eventually, Mahadeva opened his eyes, and they were nothing like Arjun expected. There was no mysticism, no fire or spectacle, only clarity, kindness, a gaze so steady it made Arjun feel both transparent and safe. Arjun bowed low and spoke, his voice soft but urgent. "Master, I've searched far and wide for peace, in books, in discourse, in distant lands, but it slips through my fingers like sand. Can you guide me?" Mahadeva studied him, then smiled, not with the lips, but with the entire presence of his being. He gestured to the space between them, to the silence that enveloped the monastery, the wind threading through the trees. "Peace," he said gently, "is not hidden in far-off places or buried within grand philosophies. It is not something to chase or conquer." He paused, then tapped his chest lightly. "It is found here, in the breath, in this very moment." Arjun furrowed his brow. "But how can something so simple be what I've spent my whole life seeking?" Mahadeva closed his eyes again. "Because the mind is loud, but the truth is quiet. You have listened long to the noise. Now you must learn to listen to the stillness." The wind whispered through the Bodhi leaves like a sacred reply. For the first time in years, Arjun felt no urgency to speak, no pressure to understand. He simply breathed, and for a fleeting second the burden of seeking loosened its grip. The morning after their first meeting, Mahadeva led Arjun to a quiet clearing behind the monastery, where wildflowers swayed in the breeze, and the only sound was the distant murmur of a hidden stream. The Bodhi tree's presence could still be felt in the air, as though its roots had extended into Arjun's restless spirit. They sat cross-legged on the grass, the earth cool beneath them. Mahadeva spoke softly, his voice like water over smooth stones. "Sit with me, Arjun. No words today. No search. Just breath." Arjun obeyed, though his heart still buzzed with the need to do something. Mahadeva continued, his eyes gently closed. "Feel the air entering and leaving your nostrils. Do not chase thoughts. Do not fight them either. Let them pass like clouds. Stay with your breath. One inhale, one exhale at a time." At first, Arjun found the practice maddening. His mind darted like a monkey, replaying memories, inventing worries, clinging to the past and reaching for the future. He shifted often, irritated by the ache in his knees, the itch on his nose, the unbearable stillness around him. He silently cursed the simplicity of the task. Observe the breath. That's it? His frustration built like a storm. But Mahadeva remained still, his breath rising and falling like the tide. And when Arjun sighed, defeated, Mahadeva finally spoke. "Your mind is like a river after the rains, muddy, swift, chaotic. Let it settle. Be patient." Arjun looked at him, weariness in his eyes. "It's just so hard to focus." Mahadeva smiled. "Each breath," he said, "is a bridge between the body and the mind. It connects what is restless with what is still. Cross it, and you will find tranquility, not in thought, but in awareness." Something in those words struck a chord, a bridge. Arjun closed his eyes again. This time he didn't try so hard. He simply watched. The coolness of the air as it entered his nostrils, the faint warmth as it left, the gentle rise and fall of his chest, the small pause between breaths. These sensations, once unnoticed, became quiet anchors in the sea of his thoughts. And in that slowness, something began to shift. The noise within started to soften. A sense of spaciousness opened up, subtle but unmistakable. The moment wasn't dramatic or mystical. It was ordinary and yet peaceful. He felt, perhaps for the first time, the simple grace of being. Mahadeva opened his eyes and saw the change in Arjun's posture. The tension had loosened, his brow no longer furrowed. The monk nodded with silent approval. "You are beginning to remember," he said. "Remember what?" Arjun whispered. Mahadeva placed a hand over his own heart. "That you are not your thoughts. You are the sky. Let the clouds come and go." And the breeze carried those words into the silence, where they settled like seeds. Days melted into weeks like snow on sun-warmed stone. The rhythm of life in the monastery was gentle but unwavering, rising with the sun, silent meals, moments of meditation scattered like pearls throughout the day. Arjun followed this rhythm without resistance. The urgency that once drove him had quieted, replaced by a steady inward gaze. At first the silence had been daunting. Now it became a sanctuary. Each morning he returned to the same clearing with Mahadeva, sitting in the soft hush of dawn. He no longer battled his thoughts as enemies, but watched them come and go with a calm detachment. His breath, once unnoticed, like background noise, had become a guide, a tether to the present. Inhalation, exhalation, just this. One crisp morning, as a flock of birds cut across the pale blue sky, Arjun found himself smiling, not at anything in particular, but at the fullness of the moment. The rustle of leaves, the warmth of the sun on his face, the stillness inside him. It all felt like a silent song he had only just learned to hear. The restlessness that had haunted him for so long was no longer gnawing at the edges of his mind. It hadn't vanished in some dramatic moment of revelation. It had simply faded, like mist retreating from the light. In its place was something softer, steadier, presence. He noticed the small things, the way dew collected on petals, how wind whispered secrets through the pines, how the monks bowed to one another, not out of custom, but out of quiet reverence. The world hadn't changed, but he had. His eyes saw more. His heart felt more. One evening, as the sky turned the color of saffron and the valley filled with birdsong, Arjun sat beside Mahadeva once more. "I used to think peace was a destination," he said, his voice thoughtful. "Something I had to reach through effort, or intellect, or pilgrimage. But now I see. It was always here." Mahadeva nodded, stirring the embers of a small fire between them. "Peace isn't a treasure buried in distant lands," he replied. "It's the flame already lit within. All you had to do was stop fanning the wind." Arjun closed his eyes, letting the words settle. He breathed in, slow, full, and exhaled, long and steady. In that moment he felt the vastness of life, not as something to conquer or understand, but as something to simply be with. The transformation was not loud or visible. It lived in the quiet of his gaze, the steadiness of his breath, the softness of his heart. He was no longer the seeker. He was the space in which seeking ended. Arjun returned to Varanasi, not as a restless seeker, but as a man grounded in mindfulness. He shared his experience with others, teaching them that every breath is an opportunity to connect with the now. This tale reminds us that in the rhythm of our breath lies the key to inner peace. By embracing each inhale and exhale with awareness, we align ourselves with the essence of life.